Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Thursday night, January 19th Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to start with some satellite data tonight. We're just watching the sunset here on Thursday night, and here's the first of a couple of deep lows that are going to move across the country. This is the one that was responsible for all the very heavy snow that came out of Colorado into Nebraska and Iowa, and is right now currently spreading some snow on the northern side of this system. It was also the one that, if you got a chance to watch the video this morning, we were concerned about the risk of some strong to severe storms in Ohio. And as the sun was setting tonight, there were a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings here, and some of the storms were capable of producing winds in excess of 50 miles an hour. So we're just going to keep an eye out on these throughout the rest of the evening. But it was interesting to see, as the kind of skies cleared out, just how much snow did fall on the backside of this system here into parts of Nebraska. And finally got earlier this morning, we did get the newest data looking at the last 3 days of total accumulation. And I gotta be honest, the models, in my opinion, did quite well with the snow right in through here, picking up on this narrow corridor that was capable of picking up over 18 inches. Maybe down into parts of southeastern Nebraska, and then right here in southwestern Iowa, maybe the amounts were overdone a bit, but still quite a good forecast of the position of this particular snow band as it's moving through. We got a lot more snow to be talking about with this pattern change. We're going to get to that in a few moments here, but I wanted to talk to you for just a second about where the water is in the snow right now. So this is our latest snow water equivalent map. As you get a good look at it, you can come down here to the color bar and kind of match up how much liquid equivalent is in this. And so I think about this a lot with the headwaters of the Missouri River, which, as we can see right now in parts of Montana, did not have snow on the ground. But the northern branches of the Mississippi do have quite a bit of liquid in the snow, and more is being added to that right now. So where the Missouri's picking up its snowpack is not until it gets down in South Dakota and cuts through parts of Nebraska. This is the area that we're seeing it. But another thing we want to talk about tonight, or I want to talk about tonight, is a question I've gotten a lot this week, which is about what's going on here with the Colorado River Basin. So we've covered a lot about the moisture and the precipitation that came into the west. In fact, in this morning's report, we put that NWS map that showed that we're setting records here for like a 23-day stretch since late December into about the 17th of January. Some places here is just seeing record-setting rain, and we added it up, and it looked like about 32 trillion gallons of water, which is an incredible amount. But if we just take a close look right in here in the Colorado Basin, and a quick reminder geographically where this is, we kind of have two parts to the Colorado Basin. There's the upper basin in Utah, Colorado, and parts of Wyoming. And then you have the lower basin, which mostly encompasses Arizona. So just thinking about this, you can find the Grand Canyon, Lake Mead, Lake Powell. There's the Glen Canyon Dam. So we're just we're going to use this to kind of assess where the snowpack is. Got to talk to a guy today. I was over in Springfield, Illinois. He went skiing out here and said the snow was amazing. And looking at the snow in the upper basin, we can see that when you compare it to average, which is this dashed blue line in through here, currently 2023 is looking really good. So we're well above average. We're actually approaching the highest values that we've got here in the last 10 years, which would be 2017. So it would appear that there is going to be water that will get into the river system that could get in and start to make up for some of the deficits we have right now in some of those big reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So that's just a quick look at that. Now, I mentioned 2017 as being kind of a big year. And if you go back and look for California, that was a big year as well. What's important about 2016, the winter of 16 into 17, was that this was actually an El Nino year, right? So we were coming off the big El Nino from 2015 and peaked in 16, if I remember correctly, but then we still had El Nino-like behavior in the atmosphere. So it's important to see that here in the Northern Sierra, where we currently stand, all right, we're on this pace that's matching some of these big El Nino years in the past, even though it's a La Nina. Can you just kind of tuck that away in the back of your head? I'm going to come back to that again at the end of this video. Elsewhere across the country, that system through 5 o'clock tonight did spread a lot of rainfall. And again, we're watching the storms move through Ohio right now, but you just kind of pull this back through parts of the Ohio Valley, parts of the Missouri Valley, getting down to the lower Mississippi River Valley, and we can see we've added quite a bit to this. Not much of this is going to get over to the East Coast. This is an area that continues to struggle to receive rain, and not a lot of this made it back into the southern plains. But for both of these areas, I've just got better news in terms of moisture return. Where I don't have it is really coming into a place where I think in addition to these areas, really need it. Canadian Prairie, Northern Plains, and especially Montana. This has been an area since the start of the year that's gone over quite dry. So we had the new Drought Monitor that was released this morning. Remember that most of this is not included in this Drought Monitor. So a lot of rain just fell on some places like in Illinois, Indiana, and up into parts of Michigan where there is drought, where that's going to see some improvement. And the snow fell on top of Nebraska. There's up to about 2 inches of liquid in that snow right now, so that's really important to see that. But again, this is an area that's really struggled to pick up on the moisture, and we've gone back into drought here in Montana. Not that we ever, I guess, truly left it, but even though there's some snow on the ground here, we need quite a bit more here in the Northern Plains and Canadian Prairie to kind of fill that all in. So right now, just picking up with where things are this evening here on Thursday, we still have winter storm warnings out for parts of Wisconsin and the UP. We've now added a larger area here in parts of New England. Strong winds have kind of followed this system throughout much of the central United States, getting to the Ohio River Valley. And we're watching the next system, which has got a lot of cold air in California. You can see we still have frost freeze warnings here. Got a large area of winter weather advisories, and now a part of southeastern Colorado that's been kind of upgraded to a winter storm warning. So let's go take a look at how this is going to unfold. I'm going to go first to the high-res NAM, the 18Z run. We're going to pick this up a little bit later this evening around 9 o'clock. So the first low, you can see the switch over to snow here in parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Outside of that, some pretty cold rain on the southern side of this, but there is the potential that after these storms go through here, which we were just taking a look at there on satellite, of cold enough air to come around to give us some snow showers on the back side of this throughout much of the Great Lakes states. As I mentioned, the front isn't really holding together to bring rain to the Carolinas or Virginia or even farther to the south. And that system's going to continue to curl through New England. This is now getting into tomorrow morning, about 8 o'clock on Friday morning, and we can see the light snow that's going to be on the back side of this. So that system will exit, and the attention is going to come to this shortwave that's spinning right over the top of the four corner states. And what's very important about these next couple of systems is that instead of pulling out like that across the country, they're diving deeper. This one's going to come out here, and then we're going to have a subsequent one that's going to come all the way down into Mexico. And that's all evidence of the change in the pattern, splitting in the Gulf of Alaska and developing a trough that's going to be centered in this area across North America. What's sending the system still off to the north and east is there is southeastern ridging here. And I want to just, again, put that in the back of your mind as we start to think about what the presence of that ridge is going to mean, not just now, but going over the next couple of months. It seems to be a really quite permanent feature. So let's come back to this system. Here we are. This is 11 a.m. Friday morning Central Time, and that one starts to spin through southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. And this is why the winter storm warnings are out. It appears that there's going to be some really heavy snow tomorrow night on Friday night, Friday evening getting into the nighttime right here in this part of Colorado. And this is an area that is deep in drought. So this is important to see this. And that snow is going to spread through parts of Kansas, it appears. Western Kansas, another area that has that's quite deep in drought. Now, this particular wave does lose some of its characteristics. So you see it comes through and then fades. See that? Just kind of fades out there in the forecast model. But we're going to see its evolution, what ends up happening to it in just a few moments. But notice a lot of scattered storms down here from parts of Louisiana into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia with this as well. Okay, so I want to show you the pattern before I show you the results of this. So the wave that we're talking about right now is this guy right here. So that's the upper level wave. This is the the once extended jet that's now retracted, and it's broken up here into a ridge over the west. And again, these troughs are coming down just like this. Then it's getting picked up by the subtropical jet that's going like that, and there is this ridge in this area. So that's our pattern, all right? As I play this forward, the reason why we kind of lose this is because the wave opens and the subtropical jet takes over. So you no longer have quite the same strength and upper level divergence to give you a good rapid deepening of the surface low. So it's just going to spread as kind of an open, what we call baroclinic leaf with this big push from the subtropical jet. Now behind it on Saturday, we're going to watch the next wave right here. And that wave drops down, and see how much farther it goes south? It comes all the way down here almost to the border of Mexico. That's how deep that trough is. And as it ejects, we now have a lot more curvature to the flow, meaning that this system, which comes out next Tuesday, is going to have much better upper level support right here over the Red River of the South, in which to develop a low. And then it gets pulled, but keeps its curvature into the Mid-South in the Ohio River Valley. I mean, this is going to be a larger system that rolls through here. But I mean, even after that, it's still the same thing. Where's that Pacific jet really retracted? There's the big ridge. There's the split. The broader trough sits here, and the waves kind of move through it just like that. So very consistent here with the pattern all the way out to next Wednesday. And we're going to see once we get out there to Thursday and Friday that the atmosphere is really cranking up that subtropical piece of the jet here. as the Pacific jet continues to retract and really just fall apart into these pieces. Because of that, much of the West Coast is going to see a very, very dry signal in the forecast. So now that I've kind of assessed the pattern, let's go watch these next few systems roll through the models. So as we normally do, the GFS is on the left. This is 12Z run. European 12Z run is on the right. And I've got it kind of queued up here at 6 a.m. on Friday when that snow is coming out in both models in southwestern parts of Kansas and southeastern Colorado. Okay. Now you'll see that as we normally talk about, the GFS is a more progressive model, moves faster, the European's a bit slower. So as we play this forward through Saturday midday, Saturday evening, getting into the overnight hours, again, remember how that low kind of fell apart? So a lot of scattered showers and storms south right in through this area. It's in both models. But the northern side of this snow may be light snow coming out of parts of Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, and through this area. Both models are picking up on it, but we're not talking about major snowfall amounts. This doesn't have the right upper level support. In other words, the curves in the flow and the speed of the flow isn't there to rapidly drop the pressure. That's it. Not enough to create that divergence aloft to create the void that needs to be filled in to create rising motion. So we watched that system move into New England. And I'll be honest, the models have been very consistent on Sunday night into Monday morning as to where the placement of that rain snow line is going to be. It's similar in the models. Both of them have it. So the farther to the interior you go, the better the chances are of the snow. So that system clears. It does deliver rain to the Carolinas, and there's the possibility of some snow through the Appalachian Mountains with the cold air that's on the back side of it. Now, the establishment of that cold air is actually critical to the next wave and how far to the south it dips. So this is Monday, 6 a.m., Monday at noon, getting here into Monday evening. Now, the European model is slower. The GFS is faster. So what happens is that by 6 a.m. on Tuesday, the GFS has ejected the wave, and you don't see snow here. The European has got it lingering, and that's where the bigger snows are possibly coming out into the very dry areas of New Mexico and into Texas. And this is going to be critical to see which of these two models is right. At this point, the slower European model is going to have the better chance of putting down a lot more snow. The quicker GFS may have more of a severe weather side to it. In either case, you can see the difference in the position, GFS, Euro. There's a system, the timing is different in the models, and they both pull right into the Ohio River Valley. Now you can see if I just rock back and forth, this is Tuesday into Wednesday, there will be on the northern side of this enough cold air to produce a pretty decent snowfall event. And it crosses somewhere into the mid-Mississippi Valley, into the Ohio Valley and eastern Great Lakes. But you notice how much quicker GFS is than the European. Now after this is about a week out in the pattern, things kind of slow down quite a bit. We really lose any significant setup to deliver big systems, but I think it's more that the models have maybe lost the pattern a bit. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. First, I did want to zoom in using the National Digital Forecast Database. This will be coming straight from the National Weather Service on how much more snow we're expecting for parts of the Colorado River Basin, both upper and lower, with this next wave. So we can see we're going to be putting some snow in these mountains. And then as it ejects down here, I just want to make a point that there is possibly a narrow band in through here that picks up 6 to 10 inches out of this. So we'll have to watch that carefully. This is a very dry area that we're putting down some snow. If we broaden this back out to a national view, flip over to the European model. This is the European model's forecast, This is from the first system. Remember, my color bar makes a break at 4 inches for blue. Then you see the second system coming out here. That's Friday into Saturday. And then you see some light snow spreading. Remember how we saw that in the models here? And then that system as it goes into New England. Watch it add the snow right in this area. That's going to be that rain snow line that was so tricky to forecast. This is not a major I-95 corridor event. And there's the snow coming into the Appalachian Mountains. So now we know the next wave is diving, and we're going to watch it emerge on Tuesday. There it is. Now the GFS has a much different solution than the European does, which is, I'm showing you the European. And it then pulls that snow through here. This is kind of like an arc latex low right over parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, right into parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and it adds a lot more to New England. So really the hot spot in the next 7 days of total snow is going to be this big chunk of land up here in New England with picking up snow from 3 different events. So that's the GFS. This is the European. So GFS 7-day. Oh, forgive me. That's the ECMWF 7-day. This is the GFS. Euro, GFS. You see the differences in how quickly the storm moves. And that's all I can say. It's just the models have a different looking upper level wave, the GFS more progressive. Historically, we would say that the GFS will likely cave to the euro, but we don't know. We'll watch it carefully. I do want to provide some ensemble support for this second system, so I'm going to take you to the one that comes out of New Mexico and begins to form right here in this Arklatex region. So this is the European model ensemble member location. So all these L's represent different ensemble members where they're placing the low. There's a pretty decent clustering of this coming out of the Arklatex region and going straight toward kind of the confluence of the Ohio River and the Mississippi. But you do notice there's some spread. And as we always talk about, if you place the low, I'll just kind of draw it there with the arrow. If it's somewhere in there, the heaviest snows are typically 150 miles to the north and west of the system. So if the low is here versus there, it's two entirely different setups on where the snow will be. But that then kind of matures as it goes its way toward New England by next Wednesday night to Thursday. And that's what we do think will be a pretty good size system here in New England. We'll need to watch if this also has a westward progression after this. Okay, from this point, let's look at the probability of getting at least 3 inches in the next 10 days. Maybe pause it and have a close look at it here. Again, the probability of getting at least 3 inches in the next 10 days. And then let's step it up for those higher amounts. This is the probability of getting 6 inches over the next 10 days. We'll go up to a foot. And now we really see how high those chances are here in parts of New England of picking up quite a bit of snow out of these next 3 systems. Now from here, I want to talk about maybe the rainfall side of this. This is the probability of getting an inch of liquid equivalent, but a lot of what we're talking about down here is going to be rain. And so we saw earlier on the Drought Monitor how dry places have been through here. And now the models are with that subtropical jet and the big subtropical ridge just feeding the flow over the top of it, providing good upper level support for rising motion. And that's why we're going to see better chances of heavier precipitation in this area. And let's even step it up. This is the chance of getting 2 inches out of this. All right. Now on the dry side of it, how about the probability of getting less than a ½ inch? You can see a pretty large area that has less than a ½ inch of liquid in the systems that are coming through over the next 10 days. And this will kind of identify those areas that'll be quite dry. So we know the split flow is going to make the southwest getting into California quite dry. We do see drier risks in through here. So we've kind of had 2 different times where the models and our analysis suggested better precip for Montana. And now we've seen that the trajectory of these troughs diving like this rather than through Montana has really kind of removed that. So I just want to make a point to establish we kind of overestimate, I think, what could come into Montana out of these next few systems. Now, from this point to the rest of the video that we're going to talk about today, I really want to hone in and have a discussion on this pattern. And the things I want to talk about are the upstream and the downstream ridging events. Because as we get out there to the end of this month, we see still blocked up pattern over the Pacific. So there's some sort of ridge here, okay, higher than normal heights. Troughing here, subtropical ridge, and it appears to be a high or low setup in the Atlantic. But as we go forward, we don't see the models really ditching or getting rid of this ridge here, and therefore broader troughing across much of North America. But still higher than normal heights down here representing some sense of a subtropical ridge. But we then lose any sort of a block by the time we start February in the Atlantic, at least in the models. So we need to kind of distill this down as to what it might mean. Now, the models, I think, right now are losing the signal. I can certainly say, yeah, week 2 will be drier across the West. There's no reason, given the lack of strong flow on shore, to say that. But you notice how weak the signals are for the rest of the country, not really showing prevalence for above normal or even below normal precipitation. So I kind of wanted to do a quick look at this another way, because the GFS, which is what you're seeing here, shows the same thing. In fact, it's going more toward a drier bias for most of North America in week 2. But there's other ways by which we can look at this, not just the operational runs or their ensembles. And sometimes I like to show you the analogs. So this comes from St. Louis University. And what you're looking at here is they use the GFS to produce an analog forecast. So this would be basically week 1, day 10, and almost out there at the end of week 2. And we do notice, you can see in the colors, that colder air is coming. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the pattern we're currently in, okay, much drier west, very wet east. That's this week. We know why. We've seen the systems go through here. But into week 2, this is a very peculiar kind of look overall to this pattern. Out to day 10, this is an interesting look because from day 10 into week 2, you notice the models are actually showing up with better moisture. Okay, it's not overly wet, but they're not dry. Whereas the other models, the European and the GFS, did give you that dry signal. So this is something to be watching carefully. I would say that predictability out there into week 2 and beyond is a bit off. It's lower than normal at this point. We're losing some guidance, and I think we can blame the Pacific Ocean jet stream for that. I think it's in a reset mode going here into the end of this month. Now, before I tell you more about that reset mode, let's talk temperatures. This is tomorrow or Friday's high temperatures compared to normal. As we play through the weekend, here's Saturday and Sunday. Overall, not major deviations across the country, a bit cooler in the interior, warmer along the East Coast, but we're not looking at what we have been seeing, which is either 20, 30 degrees above or 20, 30 degrees below. And as we go forward into Monday and Tuesday, this is when we kind of start to see the full establishment of that trough. Remember that one that dives down and ejects, and this is the one that could potentially produce the snow that rolls through this area. So that's Tuesday into Wednesday. And from here, I want to pick this up with the latest European model. So as I go forward in this forecast, you're going to notice that the really warm anomalies begin to fade. And that's once we see the establishment of that trough that's going to be coming into the central United States. How far to the east does it make it? The models were overly aggressive on doing that at first. And we did kind of question. I can't tell you that I was very secure in my forecast, like I nailed it, but we kept questioning what the influence of that southeast ridge was. We're getting a little bit better evidence that it's going to be stronger than we initially thought. So we cool off in the Canadian Prairie, we cool off in the central United States, and in the west, return back to normal or colder than normal winter temperatures. But I'll just tell you something. Whenever you see the cold air here and the warm air there, the flow goes right in between the two. So I think things are going to be quite active in the Ohio River Valley going forward. Now, there is, before I talk more about that, one wild card with this, and it's the polar vortex. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about this among me and my colleagues and I about what this potential disruption, this lengthening and squishing of the polar vortex might mean. But I don't have any evidence to suggest at this point that it's going to fully link up with the troposphere and drive cold air somewhere. So I think we're going to have to watch it clear into February to see if it ever does manifest itself as something to be discussed across North America. So from there, we just got to get right on into the long range and have a discussion about it. This is the newest update from the European model. The only changes I could tell you from the previous forecast for February and this one is that the models did go back over a bit drier across the south and southern plains and over into California. They are giving you almost a textbook view of a La Nina February, even though the La Nina is losing its influence. But I'm going to explain to you why, even though it's lost its influence, I think we're still seeing a La Nina look to it. So what is that? Split flow comes in like this, ejects there, drier across the southern tier of the U.S., kind of south of that line. On the temperature side of this, let's flip it over and look at the 30-day temperature anomaly. You now start to see the model really wanting to keep that southeastern ridge around and alive. So I want to show you a different way of looking at these trade winds. This is the Hofmuller diagram. It's just a different view. Remember, you still have your MJO regions. 1 starts here. We get into 4, 5 there. 6, 7, 8 right in through here. So that's kind of what we're talking about. We did see back in December through early January strong westerly wind bursts. And remember, that was the point where we were making this discussion like, wow, if that happens, that's not typical of La Nina. But now there's this oscillation going back and forth. And now all of a sudden these easterly winds are forecast to take over and move all the way into the Indian Ocean. What that means is we're going to shift around where the rising air is. And it's not just the European that's doing this. The GFS is also trying to push it over there. In fact, we could even say it's doing it a bit more aggressively. And this means we're going to see a lot of MJO action in phase 2 and 3 over the coming days and possibly even a bit beyond that. And the GFS is very aggressive at putting it in phase 2 and 3. Now you say, what does that mean? Well, these are some of the characteristics we can see in February if the MJO is in phase 2 and 3. And you start to see some things here. Now, I want you to see the pattern, not the colors. I mean, the colors are important, but don't interpret too much about the colors. First, ridging here. Second, trough features that are in the center of North America. And look at this strong southeastern ridge. Now that's something we've been talking about, right? They suggest a block over the Atlantic. But then you go from phase 2 into phase 3. Now watch, we'll go phase 2, 3. We still see something similar to that, but a more defined block in the Atlantic. This is the one piece I don't yet see. I don't yet see this, but the rest of this seems to be the case for much of the end of January and the start of February. So if that is truly what's going to happen, okay, the flow comes into the northwest, the southeast ridge sits here, systems come driving over the mountains and eject in the Ohio River Valley. And that would explain, at least based upon the model analysis, why, if we come back here and have one last look at it, why the 30-day precip anomalies are wet and wet. Now, lots of things can get in and upset this pattern. If all of a sudden we get a big Alaskan ridge or Scandinavian ridge, or the jet stream picks up some momentum across the Pacific, then you toss all this out. But that's the current look we've got right now. So from here, let's talk about what this La Nina is doing. We continue to see warming. We also still have our cool anomalies here. But you know what those trades are doing? They're oscillating in their strength. Strong La Ninas don't do that. They tend to be stuck. This one is open and moving, and the MJO is going to respond. So to kind of finish this off with North America, this is what we've got currently, just released today by the CPC, Climate Prediction Center, for their, in fact, let's go to the 1 month outlook first, right up here. They've got this outlook for February. And you'd say, wow, that's La Nina. There it is. Southeastern ridge flow comes in, ejects in the Ohio River Valley. Therefore, it's wet here, drier along the coast, drier in the southwest. So they've really taken what I just described to you and put it down into these colored maps. From here, this is the 3 month outlook. This is February, March, and April. Active Ohio River Valley, and the risk of drought redeveloping or staying in this area. That's why this precipitation event coming through here is so critical. Also drier in Florida. You notice that's a common theme in all of this. Now, will this fully verify? I don't know. And what makes me say that I don't know is that I don't think we're going to stay stuck for a long time in this MJO phase 2-3. I think it's going to move. There's no reason to say that it wouldn't. The La Nina does not have a strong grip on it, in my opinion. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to look like this the whole month of February and then into March and April. I do think we're going to have tight planting windows in the Eastern Corn Belt. That's been a common theme. I think we could pick up better moisture later this season in Montana, a state I've been very concerned about. But I'll have to agree with, until I have reason to turn it over, this outlook for drought from now through April 30th. And that is continued issues here until we wash this out completely. The rains coming through now are going to help. But do we continue to develop drought in Florida? Possibly. What about the rest of Texas, New Mexico? If we can't get troughs to dive in or the subtropical jet to take over, this will likely verify. And this isn't something I want to see. I don't think it's something anybody wants to see. You want to get improvement in the drought scenario going forward, and this latest outlook is less than ideal for that. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about. You know how we like to look at the precipitation probability maps in North America for the chance of getting an inch? Well, I'm just going to show you that here for South America. And what's really important about this is, while very good rains are expected to continue to fall over much of Brazil, with a little bit drier risk into Paraguay and over in Argentina, into Rio Grande do Sul and Uruguay, the models are very consistent about the rains that are starting very soon in this area in Argentina, and likely have the potential for putting down not just an inch, but let's step this up to 2 inches. And now you see this is quite typical here, but this would be above average rainfall for much of Argentina. Another way to look at it is, if we just go out there for a 15-day time period, we see above average rains for most of Argentina, even parts of Paraguay, much of central and eastern Brazil, and even the drier areas that you see here to the north in Mato Grosso and Para and Tocantins, these areas, and even Rondônia. These areas, while they're still showing up drier, remember, we're harvesting a crop here. And the question is, if it's still there a month from now, then we're going to be talking about some issues. But there's still rain coming in, even though there's a deficit here of over an inch in this area. They're still getting probably 2 to 3 inches a week despite the deficit. So one crop's coming out, another one's going in very quickly. And this overall pattern looks to be very favorable for almost all of South America. So I'll kind of leave it off there. We'll talk again for those who get my morning report on Friday morning. For the rest of you, we'll talk again on Monday. Thanks.